Everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome if you're new here. Today I just thought I'd go through my favorite books of 2024 and then talk a little bit about my books that I'm planning to read in 2025 that are just on my list to read. And we'll start off, I just picked 5 of my favorite books from 2024 and then 5 books I really want to read in 2025. And they're not really in any particular order. We'll just do, as usual, least thick to most thick. So I'll just walk through those. A lot of them I've already kind of talked about on the channel, so I won't go too in depth. And then we'll talk about books that I really want to read in 2025. So let's get started. First up, least thick, we have Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. He also wrote Clara in the Sun. And this book I did read this year on an airplane. Actually, I finished it in one airplane ride, but I absolutely love this book. It's about a private school that has kind of like a spoiler alert mystery, or mysterious aspect about it that you don't really find out about until sort of the latter half of the book. And it's a very, very simple story that has a lot of philosophical ideas, and it sort of follows 2 kids through their early adulthood who both went to this school, and them sort of trying to find their purpose and in the world and what that school really meant to them, and kind of what life means. So it's really good. I definitely recommend it, especially if you haven't read Ishiguro before, because it's a very easily engaging story, even more so than Clara in the Sun. I haven't read anything else by him, but I definitely hope to now. And this is by far my favorite of the 2 that I've read by him. I found it really easy to get interested in. The mystery I kind of saw coming, but also couldn't figure out exactly what it was that was going on in the school. And then when it's revealed, it's actually insane, such a crazy reveal. But definitely recommend this book. One of my favorites of the year. Read it in one sitting, couldn't put it down, but also read it in one sitting just because I was on the airplane and there was nothing else to do. If I was reading it normally, I definitely would have put it down. All right, next up, a book in a series you've definitely heard me talk about, Dune Messiah. This is the second one in the series. I did read Dune 1 through 4, or 1 through 5, 1 through 4 this year. But the second one was my absolute favorite. I like this one. So the movie's going to end at the end of this book, which is a lot shorter than the first Dune book. But I did like this book, I think, better than Dune. Dune pulled me in, got me super interested. Loved it as a science fiction book and a science fiction series. But this second one was absolutely insane. It was more philosophical than the first, I think, just because not as much happens in it. There's a huge time jump, I think 12 years. And it's a little bit more simple, less going on than in the first book, which I liked. You just had a little more time with the characters. And it wraps up in a way where I would have felt, I think a lot of people probably feel this way, but I would have felt comfortable with the entire series ending at the end of this book. And it was such a great ending to a book, super meaningful, and a good, such a fabulous follow-up to Dune. Obviously, there's some people who think this book probably ruined Dune. That's not my opinion. But if you did read Dune and liked it, I definitely recommend just reading this follow-up. I don't think it actually destroys the character of Paul at all. But it definitely changes your opinion of what the role his character played in the first book, and just the role this sort of Messiah character plays in general. Really love this one. Crazy quotes in here. Yeah, Frank Herbert definitely had a crazy mind, so I recommend this. Next up, a third most thick book Down the Drain by Julia Fox. I love memoirs, and this memoir was not ghostwritten at all, totally written by Julia Fox. If you don't know who Julia Fox is, that's totally okay. Like, I still recommend this book. She's probably two things that have made her famous. One was being the love interest in Uncut Gems, and then the other is dating Kanye West for like a hot second, who is not actually mentioned in this book by name. He's just called the artist. And I would definitely recommend getting her perspective on that relationship because it's pretty insane. But yeah, it literally just follows her life growing up in Italy and New York. A lot of like kind of troubling themes, if you don't mind that, but it's a really great story. She's had a very interesting life, but I think that has made her a very like strong person, a very capable writer, and a great storyteller. So this book is, Julia Fox is not who I thought I would really be liking a memoir from, and it's not something I was hoping for or like asking for, but I'm really glad this memoir came out, and I liked it. It entertained me. But I find memoirs very interesting, and this was my favorite that I read this year. Fourth most thick, we've got David Foster Wallace, The Pale King. This book was great. It literally, unfinished though, he did pass away before it was finished, so someone else has like put the chapters together in what they think is the order. So this book is not necessarily a finished product and not necessarily the way David Foster Wallace intended it to be, but I thought whoever edited this did like a great job of putting together a complete story. Like he writes in a way where there really wouldn't have mattered almost like what order most of the chapters were in and whether or not the story had an ending. It's really just, so it's a book about basically employees at the IRS just living with the monotony of day-to-day life and their day-to-day jobs. And it's very much just pulling on the modern day life, modern day employment, and just sort of these repetitive tendencies in life that we have to deal with. But love him as a writer. Really like Infinite Jest. I go back and forth between which one I like better. I think I go back to Infinite Jest more for quotes, but just probably enjoyed reading this book a lot more because it had a bit more of a plot and then was a bit more easy to follow than Infinite. Infinite Jest has a lot going on and is purposefully mostly nonsense, but still like that book. But really enjoyed this one, and if you're reading David Foster Wallace for the first time, I would probably suggest you read this one before Infinite Jest. Unless you're like, I'm only reading one long book, then definitely read Infinite Jest because the bragging rights after finishing Infinite Jest are pretty nuts. Cool. And now, last favorite book of 2024, last year would be The Dark Forest, which is the second book in the Three Body Problem series. And my favorite of the three, like the first one is good, it gets you hooked, but it's also, you're getting used to reading the series and getting used to the world. The third one is also amazing, like wraps up the series really well, but there's so much going on, so many time jumps back and forth. But the second one is a little bit more condensed. You're familiar with a lot of the characters, and there's just this epic battle in the middle that if you know anything about this series, you probably heard it mentioned, and it's just like it's just one of the most, like, I don't even like reading fighting or like battle books just because it never interests me that much, but this battle is like literally the most crazy epic battle and just absolutely mind-blowing. But love this book. This is what, like, the first book got me kind of hooked on the series, but this book is the book that like made me really fall in love with this series. Okay, now we're gonna move on to books that I really hope to read in 2025. And I just picked 5 of those as well. And let me know what your thoughts were if you've read any of the books below. Okay, first up, Donna Tartt, The Goldfinch. It will be the last of my Donna Tartt novels to read. And by far, I think it's going to be the most difficult. I have tried to read this book twice. Once on Audible, didn't finish it. Once in the actual book, didn't finish it. And then I even tried to watch the movie, did not finish it. But I really want to read all of Donna Tartt's works. I might have been a little bit too young to read them when I first tried, but I feel ready. It's by far the thickest. For some reason, I can't get into the plot too much. I don't know. The main character is it starts out with the main character being a young 12-year-old boy, and I just can't relate to the main character enough, which is my own problem. But I'm gonna try to read this again. I'll hopefully finish this year. If I go on a trip or something, I'll probably just bring this book and try to get as far into it as I can. So we're going with that. Next up is a book I actually don't know a lot about, but I've heard great things about. So I have no idea really what the plot is, aside from it's a family drama, and I've heard it compared to East of Eden, which I really, really like East of Eden. So I'm hoping to like this one. This one's 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and it is translated, I think, from Spanish. So the just how smooth it goes might be a little bit difficult, but I just really hope to read this one because I really like long sort of family dramas where it's just centered around one family and a lot happens, generations, all that stuff. Really like those kind of books, so this is just kind of been on the back of my mind, but this is a year I really want to read it. So yeah, hoping to get into this. Next up, we've got The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is just a classic that I always have on my mind to read, but have never actually read it. I do know the plot. I do know a lot about it. I won't explain it because you guys have probably heard of it. But I'm interested in the themes. And then what's gotten me want to read it this year is just recently I've heard a lot of people talk about having read it and then finding it's one of their favorite books, or they just love it so much. So yeah, this is one I want to read, and it seems like it holds up over time. Also, part of it, so I watched the movie The Substance, which 100% don't recommend it unless you're prepared to be disgusted. I really liked it because I like Demi Moore. I like horror movies. I don't mind the discussing it that much, but a lot of people left the theater halfway through it. But I watched The Substance, and I low-key feel The Substance is kind of the modern day female portrait of Dorian Gray, and I want to see how accurate that take is by actually reading Dorian Gray. So we'll see. But if you have read Dorian Gray and you have read The Substance, let me know if you can feel comfortable making with that comparison, and I'll let you know after I read this book. Okay, next up, Shuggie Bain, sort of another epic. The reason I want to read this year is two years ago, I read Demon Copperhead, loved that, and I've heard this is somewhat similar to Demon Copperhead, and also just on its own, unrelated to that, is just an amazing saga of a young man's life. So I really just want to read this because I know I'm gonna like it. And why I'm putting it on my list is because it's long, which can be intimidating. So, yeah, definitely want to read this. Last but not least, these ones were in no particular order either. We've got Purity by Jonathan Franzen. I've definitely mentioned it before, but Franzen's one of my favorite authors. I think my favorite book by him is Freedom. I've also read The Corrections and his newest ones that's part of the trilogy Crossroads. And this is the book, I think, that first pretty much made him famous. It's one of his older books. It also has a female main character, because I know Franzen gets a lot of slack for the way he writes female characters, which I've talked about this before, but I don't have a huge problem with it just because it's at the end of the day, it is a guy who's still putting female characters in his book, and I think his intentions are good when writing female characters. They just sometimes come out kind of flat and one-dimensional because he obviously doesn't have that experience. So yeah, I want to give this one a try. see how I like it, because I usually really like his books. The reason I'm actually putting on my list is just because for some reason I just haven't picked it up, and I've had it for a little while, so I really want to get this book read this year. But yeah, those are 5 of my favorite books from 2024, and then 5 books that I really hope to read this year. So yeah, let me know if you have any book goals this year. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.